Episode 5 of Secret Garden is called The Western Highlands, and it is, as you'd expect, set in the Scottish Highlands. So this was probably the one that I was looking forward to most, just because it's set in Scotland, and obviously I'm from Scotland. And this episode basically takes place pretty much slap bang in the middle of the Highlands. You see all the moors, the heather, everything's around it. The garden does stand out quite a bit because it's very green. The guy clearly looks after it. And the guy that runs it basically lives alone, and he seems to spend quite a lot of his time making the garden appeal to different animals. And the first bit of footage we get features a buzzard in winter, where we see this female buzzard. She's struggling to find food, but he brings out a bit of venison for her, which is great. She's able to feed on that, but that obviously attracts another buzzard, which she then fights with. Buzzards will occasionally kill each other over carcasses, especially in winter, but she spares this one because it's probably related to her. It probably is a former chick of hers. And that's interesting. I mean, it's always good seeing buzzards. I feel like I take buzzards for granted because I see them so often, just milling about in the countryside, and I feel like that's the case for most people that spend any time in the British countryside. So I feel like it was nice to get a bit of footage of them. While they are very common, they are quite impressive birds. So I think it's good that we got that. We don't spend any more time with the buzzards. The main characters of this episode are by far the barn owls. The barn owls are great, and I wasn't really expecting barn owls to be a major focus in this episode. When I think of, animals in the Scottish Highlands, I think of red deer, pine martens, golden eagles. I don't really think of barn owls, so it's actually nice to see the barn owls. It's kind of a bit similar to footage we've had before with nesting birds. He's got this owl box in his house, and the barn owl nests there, and this barn owl's been there for like 5 years, and it doesn't seem too shy. It comes out occasionally to look at them in the day, which is quite cool. That's definitely very rare to see. And she's basically waiting for her mate to come back, but because barn owls need to be silent predators, they've basically sacrificed the waterproofness of their feathers to make them more silent. Somehow, I don't know how that works. So in periods of really heavy rain, which obviously you do get in the Western Highlands, she's basically grounded, and more importantly, her mate can't return to the nest. However, when the rain's past, the male returns, they're able to reproduce, and they produce a clutch of eggs, and those chicks basically make it to adulthood, and they fledge. But it's a nice sequence watching the owls make it, because barn owls are, quite attractive birds. I think they're probably the nicest looking owls. And I'm glad we got a good bit of time with them here, because I wasn't really expecting that, so that was really good. The other main animal I think we get are the pine martens. The pine martens seem pretty abundant in this garden. He basically puts a lot of food out to feed them. We focus on this one female that's her first year. She's a young female. She basically thrives off the things that he leaves out: peanuts, meat. Even makes a wee den for her. The most interesting thing about the pine martens, I think, was them actually going for the sand martens. We see the classic sand martens in the bank, which is a really iconic image in the British countryside, and we see the pine marten at night going into them to catch the sand martens. That was really cool. I really liked that. That was one of the more interesting sequences in this episode, because a lot of stuff is kind of familiar, I think, but it was really good. And the pine martens were great. I really liked them throughout this episode. There's a great sequence at the end of the episode with the pine martens feeding outside his window, and his face is pretty much pressed against the window watching them, and they're not bothered at all when other pine martens come in. It's implied that there might be, a breeding pair there. It was really good. Again, pine martens are really cool. They're really nice looking animals. I've had a pretty interesting experience with pine martens in the Highlands, but I think they are just really good animals. You don't see that often. So I'm glad we got a good chunk of them here as well. Yeah, that was really good. Our other animals that get slightly less screen time, red squirrels, another iconic Scottish Highland animal. We just see them occasionally. We see them feeding in the summer, and then later on nearby, because they're not actually in the garden properly. We see them burying their nuts for winter. It's good. Again, red squirrels, nice to see. They're not doing anything miraculous that we haven't seen squirrels do before in these series, but it was still nice to see. Toads as well. There's a lot of stuff with toads. The toads actually crossing the road to get to the pond is good. Again, kind of like what we got with the frogs in the second episode, but it is different because A, they're toads, and B, because they have to travel a lot wider. And they highlight how so many toads actually die crossing roads to get to their breeding ponds. That was interesting. And the wee toadlets emerging later on are really cool. Them crawling over the sundew was good. I like they highlighted the sundew in his garden, because he has made a proper bog habitat, which is obviously great for them. Reptiles as well, we get a bit of stuff with reptiles, the slow worms and the lizards mainly. We just see them basking in the sun, and that was really good. We don't get a lot of time with them, but it's interesting. And we get a lot of other sweeping shots, things like red deer, birds. It's a lot of really good stuff in this episode. It's a really good celebration of the Scottish Highlands, I think. The Diaries is all about them filming the pine martens, and actually it's Simon King. There was a time where Simon King was always in these kind of programmes, things like Big Cat Diaries, Spring Watch. He did stuff for Planet Earth. He hasn't really been on the telly in ages, I don't think. I kind of thought he'd retired. But he seemed to know the guy. The guy, him and the guy were pals. The guy was even slagging him off, which was quite funny. And he was just, camped out in the guy's garden, filming the pine martens. It was really good. So yeah, this episode is good. It's probably the second or third best. I think the first episode's definitely the best one. But this is really good. Again, the barn owls were great. The pine martens were really good. All the other stuff was really good as well, even though we didn't get a lot of stuff with it, the buzzards. And overall, this series was pretty good as well. It was very small scale, and it was a wee bit repetitive sometimes. You only tend to find so many animals in different people's gardens, and the fact that they got such a wide variety of different types of gardens was really impressive. So I think they did a really good job of kind of cataloguing the urbanised British countryside, I think. So that was really good. I'm not doing a top 10 list for this series because kind of like Kingdom, it's, pretty small scale. It doesn't really lend itself to that. Yeah, as this is the last episode I'll be doing, let me know what series you'd like me to talk about next. I've got some ideas for what I'd like to go next, but recommendations are always welcome. I'm also going to do a video for Attenborough's 100th birthday. I've got a top 10 list for that, so look forward to that. And as ever, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Or don't if you don't want it, it's perfectly fine. And I'll see you next time, and goodbye.